Perfect. This is my last slide, just showing sort of future directions. We have a large focus on prevention, the successful aging group I talked about for PTSD. We have an education initiative program which is working with students. And we are continuing the work focusing on specific clinical populations, trying to reduce their symptoms. And on top of these, some of them are combined in these studies and some are separate studies, but we're really trying to figure out this mechanism better using these types of methods, the animal models, hormones, continuing to do the gene expression studies.
Is that relatively new technology, the gene expression measurements?
Yes, and especially for behavioral interventions. It's not, really hasn't been used in this type of work. It's, has been used in some medical, but it's definitely on the frontier.
So you're actually talking about epigenetic changes to the genome?
Yes.
That's
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very,
And so you're seeing some evidence that that's actually happening, that those are changes.
Yeah.
How How do they assess that? Is that through electron microscope, or how is it?
No, there's. I mean, this. We basically use a gene chip, and you take blood samples, and you have to put them in these special RNA or DNA tubes, which keep them, from really breaking down. And then the gene chips. After using the gene chips, you can do gene ontology analysis, gene set enrichment analysis. More detailed than that, I can't really describe to you, but because genetics isn't my field, but that's sort of the general idea. Yes.
What is meant by microbiota analysis?
So that's looking at the bacteria in our bodies. So we all have
gut bacteria, not skin.
Yeah, it's looking. This one's looking at bacteria in the gut and nasal pharyngeal cavity.
Okay.
Yes.
Under clinical conditions, what was TMD?
Oh, that's temporal mandibular joint disorders. Yes. Thank you. So it's people with chronic facial pain, sort of in the muscles of their joints. Other question?
Do you work with the genetic habits in people, or is this a separate institute?
It's a separate institute, and we haven't. We've worked with Sarah Lazar, who's also at Mass General, and she does neuroimaging research, and she's doing. She works with both our group and Kabat-Zinn's group, and actually, there's one. They currently are collecting data. Comparing and contrasting sort of the two types of interventions.
Could you kind of give us your view on what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so the sort of, as I said at the beginning, again, the take-home message is that what we're studying is a physiological state. So we teach a variety of techniques, and it's really that we're looking at this result and how that state affects health and well-being. MBSR is a specific technique, and I guess what can sort of complicate if you're trying to separate them out is that we teach mindfulness as one of the techniques. So if we're trying to really compare, which I think our future research should and will look at different methods and how they compare and contrast, we should look at, we're going to have to record how long people are actually engaging in mindfulness versus single point meditation, and keep track of those types of things. Yes?
What are your animal models? What are the animal models?
So we have, the animal models are really interesting. There are, so it's with mice, and they have these nestlets, and so nestlets are, I forget exactly what they're made of, but they're these little like square almost made out of like hay or some material like that. And they basically like tear them up. They pull them apart, but they do so in a very like rhythmic fashion. And the idea is that this like repetitive motion and is really eliciting similar changes, because when they're engaging in these activities, they have decreases in heart rate and other associated factors. And these are also helping with things like such as wound healing. So the rats, when they engage in these practices, their wounds heal much more quickly than if they don't do something like that. So as with any animal model, it's not a perfect comparison, but it is shedding some light on more of the mechanisms.
Well, how surprising is the gene expression changes? I mean, maybe anything causes gene expression changes. And which genes are you looking at?
Right. So it's exciting because if you just sort of take a step back and think about it, it's still a lot of people think that these techniques don't have biological changes, and even though that's what our work's based on. So just showing that there are physiological changes, but it makes sense that they're going all the way down to gene expression. So I think if you think about it, it's not actually that surprising. It's exciting that we're actually able to show this, and we're trying to use it to tailor interventions once we know, okay, so in IBS and IBD, these are the overlapping genes that are affected. These are genes that are affected just in IBS. These are just in IBD, and sort of understanding, more from a mechanistic standpoint, what genes expression and down the cascade is being affected. It can help us better tailor these interventions.
So specific to that.
Yeah. We're interested in sort of commonalities and differences, but yeah.
Is there any gene expression study finished that we could have a look at the results, or is it ongoing?
There is, the PLOS one that I mentioned, and if you want to come up after, I can go into some more detail because it does get quite complicated. But yeah, that one, they had both the long-term meditators and short-term meditators and novices, and found overlapping and distinct patterns that, I think are quite interesting.
Well, thank you, Matt. So, we have a tradition here that after the talks, everybody's invited to join Matt and us for dinner and discussion. We usually go to the expensive and lousy restaurants in the student union, but when we have somebody visiting from out of town, we need to take them somewhere better. Can I just get I was thinking maybe Loving Spoonfuls, the vegetarian restaurant up Campbell a little bit. Can I just get a show of hands of who would want to join us for dinner? Okay, cool. So we can hang out here for a few minutes if anybody wants